Hey, this is Jack Fang from Historical Archery. Today I'm going to be making a quick response video regarding Lars Anderson's 1,120 arrows in 1.4 minutes. If you haven't seen the video, it is very impressive. He can shoot a large quantity of arrows, not 1,120, but 100 arrows in 18.4 seconds. That is very impressive, and honestly is a new record in terms of the sheer amount of arrows he can shoot under 20 seconds is very impressive in that context. But later on, when he gets into warfare and historical context, that's when I decided to make this video, a quick response video, and especially because when I look at the comments, a lot of people are saying they should hire him for imagine the amount if all the archers back then shot like him, how many millions of arrows are shot. Or I saw another comment, all we need is Lars Anderson and we can have 100 archers, something like that. And that's where I want to separate the difference, because a lot of these people who watch Lars Anderson's video doesn't do archery, and they don't know that there are many other factors involved when it comes to shooting arrows. It's not just about the sheer quantity of arrows, right? The draw weight of his bow is fairly light. You can see that he's not spending a lot of effort. So we're gonna assume, say, 50 pounds. Now, when I first thought about this, I'm just thinking if you have a 50-pound bow and you have 10 arrows, it's like 5 pounds per arrow. But the more I think of it, the more I realize it's more complicated than that. Instead of thinking of the draw weight, you should be thinking about the arrow velocity, because that's really the output of the bow. So if we think about that, when you multiply by 10, when you have 10 arrows, you're multiplying the weight by 10, assuming you're using the same weight of the arrows. Simply put, it's not that simple. It's not like, oh, you have a 50-pound bow, then you divide by 10, then you get about 5 pounds an arrow. It's a bit more complicated than that. So, for example, if you're shooting a 500 grain arrow with a 50-pound, now you multiply by 10, you have a 5,000 grain arrow. That's basically the speed. Plus other factors, like when you have 10, they kind of crumble together. There's friction, there's air velocity, blah, 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 air resistance. There's a lot of factors, but if you just want to think about the fundamental physics here, just the weight, you're multiplying the weight by 10 if we're using the same amount of arrows. Now, what I noticed about Lars Anderson, he's using much lighter arrows, and that makes a huge difference. And that's, you can see these arrows are really wobbly. They're not spined for 50 pounds each. They look a lot less spined, and that's the secret here. So when you have 10 arrows, these 10 arrows have to be much lighter to compensate for that. Like each weight of the arrow is lighter than a conventional arrow, but when you add those 10 up, I think they're still much heavier than one arrow. And you can see from the speed that he's shooting, I don't know the arrow weights there, so it's hard to tell. These arrows are very flimsy. When they hit something, they likely bend because they're so flimsy. They'll likely bend and buckle, and it'd be hard to penetrate things. I would definitely go much higher in draw weight in order for this to be practical. Something like 100 pounds, and then having 10 arrows. That's something I'm more interested to try. My point is, a 50-pound bow by itself with one arrow is unlikely to penetrate armor. Even clothing, like the lightest padding, just having gambeson, or most of the soldiers have shields. At best you're trying to aim at somebody's eye sockets, but it's just very. I think it's also a very short range. You cannot shoot far with that. It basically wouldn't penetrate much. So penetration is very important in archery. In a historical sense, there's a reason why people train their entire life to pull heavy bows. I've trained for the past 10 years pulling very heavy bows. When I first started, I go into the 30, 50-pound bows, but now I'm getting into the 150 with thumb draw, and I'm trying to get higher to the 170-pound, and that is to practice archery that was done historically. Many archers, such as the Manchus, the Turkish. So ultimately, I think you could do this, but it would not be recommended to use a light bow. a heavier bow shooting 10 arrows would be recommended in this scenario. And it'd be better to aim at unarmored units, especially without shields, because if the enemy has shields, it's just very impractical to shoot at them. Most of the arrows would hit the shields. You know, poison isn't something everyone has. It's not very accessible depending on the region where you're at. And even if you do have poison, it takes a lot of labor to supply such a large quantity of arrows. And that's the other thing I want to talk about is the sheer manufacturing of that many arrows, like say 1,100 arrows shot in 1 minute. Do you know how much effort and like time it takes, even with a modern machines? So just imagine back then trying to make that many arrows, and then all wasted in such a short amount of time. Simply put, it's more efficient to use of resources to have higher draw weight bow with heavier arrows. So personally, I really enjoy doing some of the archery that Lars Anderson does as a hobby and sport. For example, speed shooting a 20-pound bow with 6 arrows rapidly. It's a lot of fun. You have a lot of adrenaline, and I've even figured how to do it with a 50-pound. And here's one of my more recent videos with a 125-pound at 30 inches. But holding the arrows like a magazine and using the Slavic draw has very little historical context. That we have some written documentation of, the Slavic draw from Arab archery, but we don't have, arrows held in a magazine in conjunction with that. There are some historical texts depicting archers holding arrows with their string hand, but almost always they're held at the center of gravity or near the arrow heads, not at the rear. And there's many reasons for this. I make videos about it, but I don't want to get into that. The point is, I enjoy doing Lars Anderson archery, but I just think a lot of the viewers should understand, it's not just about the sheer quantity of arrows. There's so many other factors involved, such as the efficiency of the bow. Draw weight is not everything. There's so many other factors, like the bow efficiency. Anyways, thanks a lot, guys, for watching. I'm still working on speed shooting the 70-pound bow. That video, I'm turning it into an essay, actually, and I want to simplify some of the language. I'll get that video out soon. And my Chinese crossbow is basically made. I just don't have anywhere to shoot it. I can't just go to the bush and shoot it because that's illegal, and film myself shooting that is a bad idea. That's the main issue right now, especially what's going on with the world. It's really hard to find a place to shoot it. And at the range, you can't shoot it either because it's a crossbow. So I got nowhere to shoot that crossbow. It's really annoying. So thanks a lot for watching. This is basically a very quick response video. And see you later. Bye.